Hi, I'm Tanya Kakwalis, and this is a review of my informal assessment for my elementary student for the assessment module. The informal assessment that I created for my elementary student was to work on following directions. Basically, I took a variety of pictures, whether they be pictures of animals, of fruits, of children, of different colors of flowers, and of different school items, and placed them onto several sheets of paper. Then I created 1-step, 2-step, and 3-step directions with varying components that would be included. With this assessment, I simply put the pictures out in front of the student and gave them the direction. I watched to see if the student followed the direction and then either put an X under the yes column in my computer if the student correctly followed the direction, or an X under the no column if the student incorrectly followed the direction. The reason I chose this as the skill to work on is because based on the student's verbal IQ scores on the RILES, the following oral directions deficits on the SELF-5, and his attention deficits on the BASC-3 that were reported both at home and in the school setting, I felt that following oral directions was definitely something that was impacting him in all areas of his life, both academically and at home. The skills that were being assessed were simple 1, 2, and 3-step oral directions, 1 and 2-step directions that had comparative critical elements. Basically, for this assessment, I was looking more at comparing things based on color or size. Then 1 and 2-step directions for spatial elements. This was looking at being able to locate items such as above, below, over, and under. And then 1, 2, and 3-step directions with temporal elements involved. This is how things relate to each other. Duration, order, and sequence. For these, I was looking a lot of times at first, last, kind of the order of things, those sort of directions. When I administered this assessment, like I said, the student simply complied with the directive and I marked a yes or a no. When it was time to score the assessment, I simply totaled up the number of yeses for each type of direction. Then I could just simply divide the number of yeses by the number of questions to get the percentage. I did color code each separate type of direction on the score sheet, so it was very quick and easy to see whether it was a 1-step, a 2-step, or a 3-step direction that was being scored. The student's behavior during the assessment was very good. He was eager to perform well. He did have a lot of questions about why we were doing this. Once I explained to the student that it was to show off how well he could listen and follow directions, he was pretty excited. He stayed very focused. He was interactive because I did use visuals, knowing that his nonverbal intelligence was higher than his verbal. He did require some high fives, some positive reinforcement here and there to keep him focused, and I did have to redirect him to task a few times. But other than that, he was very compliant. I believe it was an accurate assessment. When looking at the results from the assessment, the following scores were obtained by Austin. When we looked at simple 1-step directions, Austin had a perfect score. He was able to identify a dog or a pig or a zebra, those sort of things. When we looked at 1-step comparative directions, when I was looking for the smallest apple or the longer banana or the biggest orange, he also made 100%. When we looked at 1-step temporal directions, he scored a 67%. He struggled when asked to look at the picture before another picture, like point to the picture before the book. He had a difficult time distinguishing which one was before the book. When we looked at 1-step spatial directions, as far as above, under, and below, he scored 100%. When we got into 2-step directions, we started to see a little bit more difficulties. Simple 2-step directions like find the cow and then the pig, he was able to do. When we moved into 2-step directions that had comparative elements, such as the biggest, smallest, big, little, smaller, longer, larger, he scored a 33%, only getting one of the questions correct. When looking at 2-step temporal directions, where we looked at before, after, first, last, third, fifth, starting, middle, things like that, he also scored a 33%, only getting 1 of 3 correct. And then when we looked at two-step spatial directions, he was able to get many of the spatial directions, but he struggled when he had to do beside or underneath. He could do above and below and under and over. But he scored a 67% in spatial directions for two-step directions. When we moved into three-step directions, basic three-step directions, he scored a 67%. The error that he did make, however, was he was asked to point to the animal with the striped animal, and he pointed to the cow instead of the zebra. So I'm not sure, how much he was attending, and for sure if he understood what a striped animal was. When we looked at three-step temporal directions, he did not get any of those directions correct. And again, those were directions that were moving into first, after, third, middle. He struggled with those. Overall, I felt that the assessment gave me some good information that could be used to help work on goals for the student and ways to assist the student in multiple settings. The changes that I would make in the future, I think, first of all, I would have put more opportunities to respond to each type of direction. I was worried about Austin's age and his focus, and so I didn't want to overwhelm him with an assessment that was too long. However, he stayed very engaged because it was bright, colorful pictures, and they were cartoon-like, and a lot of positive reinforcement was given. In the future, instead of having 3 of each type of direction, I would probably have at least 5. The other thing that I would do differently is when I saw that the student was not being successful. For example, when he did two-step temporal directions, he made a 33%. I went ahead and administered the 3-step temporal directions. In the future, I'd probably just stop so I could have more time to do directions that he would be able to comply with. I do believe that this information does correlate with his formal assessment data, which does show that he struggles not only with following oral directions, but also comprehending oral things as well as his attention.